Narrative writing, characterization, and conflict in narratives. Characterization. Definition. Characters are distinctive personalities who are involved in the events described by the story. Characterization is the way in which authors convey information about their characters or the process of creating a character. Moreover, it can be direct or indirect. Characterization. Types. The writer can create an impression of any character's personality directly or indirectly. The writer can either directly describe any qualities of the character, for example, George was cunning and greedy. Otherwise, the writer will show how a character is by portraying his actions, speech or thought, etc. Characterization. Importance. Characterization is a crucial part of making a story compelling. In order to interest and move readers, characters need to seem real. Authors achieve this by providing details that make characters individual and particular. Good characterization gives readers a strong sense of characters' personalities and complexities. It makes characters vivid, alive and believable. Characterization. Example: Lincoln's shock of black hair, brown furrowed face, and deep-set eyes made him look older than his 51 years. He was a familiar figure to almost everyone in Springfield, as was his singular way of walking, which gave the impression that his long, gaunt frame needed oiling. He plodded forward in an awkward manner, hands hanging at his sides or folded behind his back. His step had no spring. Characterization. Reader's interpretation. What does the character look like? Lincoln has black hair and a wrinkled face. He looks older than he is, and he appears deeply sad until he starts talking. He has a particular, awkward way of walking. How does the character behave towards others? How do others behave toward the character? He is warm and friendly towards others, and others, or at least this reporter, seem to react with fondness and admiration toward him. What does the character seem to care about? Lincoln seems to care about and thrive on his interactions with others. He seems less concerned with his physical appearance. What adjectives does the author use to describe the character's personality? The author quotes the reporter as saying when Lincoln interacts with people, he loses his sorrowful appearance and becomes bright with a winning smile, keen intelligence, genuine kindness, and true friendship. Characterization. Creation. Tell the reader about the character's personality. Describe the character's appearance and manner. Portray a character's thoughts and motivation. Use dialogue to allow a character's words to reveal something important about his or her nature. Show others' reactions to the character or person you're portraying. Use a character's actions to reveal his or her personality. Characterization. Characters. The protagonist, a hero or heroine of a story, whose progress in life is the storyline of a story. The flaw, problem, conflict or quest that confronts the protagonist provides the substance of a story. The protagonist is usually blessed with virtues that place him on the side of good. Characterization. The anti-hero, a type of a protagonist who presents himself more like an antagonist. As the story develops, the reader comes to understand that the anti-hero is really on the side of good. The antagonist, a hero or heroine of a story who actively opposes the protagonist, hindering the protagonist's progress toward a resolution of his problem. The antagonist represents an opposing force that is depicted as evil. Characterization. The villain, the most stereotypical type of an antagonist, depicted as an utterly evil person. The villain has no scruples and hates everyone and everything. The evil twin, a type of an antagonist who is the alter ego of the protagonist. This opposition to the protagonist multiplies the effect of conflict in a story. The false protagonist, a character who is introduced as a protagonist at the beginning of the story, but removed from the storyline later on. This character is replaced by another character who is elevated to the level of protagonist. Conflict. Definition. In works of narrative, conflict is the opposition main characters must face to achieve their goals. Traditionally, conflict is a major literary element that creates tension and interest in a story by adding doubt as to the outcome. A narrative is not limited to a single conflict. While conflicts may not always resolve in narrative, the resolution of a conflict creates closure, which may or may not occur at a story's end. Conflict. Nature. Conflicts may be internal or external. An internal or psychological conflict arises as soon as a character experiences two opposite emotions or desires, usually virtue or vice, or good and evil inside him. This disagreement causes a character to suffer mental agony. Internal conflict develops a unique tension in a storyline marked by a lack of action. Conflict. External conflict, on the other hand, is marked by a characteristic involvement of an action wherein a character finds himself in struggle with those outside forces that hamper his progress. The most common type of an external conflict is where a protagonist fights back against the antagonist's tactics that impede his or her advancement. Conflict. Types. Person versus fate/God. Person versus self. Person versus person. Person versus society. Person versus nature. Person versus supernatural. Person versus technology. Conflict. 1. This category could be considered part of conflict with self or with society. Many people count only 4 types of conflict, including those 2 and conflict with another person or with nature. That's a valid argument, as one confronts fate as part of an internal struggle and religion is a construct of society, but explicitly naming fate, Oedipus Rex, or God, or the gods, the Odyssey, as the antagonist is a useful distinction. Conflict. 2. A person's struggle with his or her own prejudices or doubts or character flaws constitutes this type of conflict. Hamlet. 3. Any story featuring a hero and a villain or villains, the Count of Monte Cristo, represents this type of conflict, though the villains are often representative of another antagonist in this list, whether a villain is in essence an alter ego of the protagonist, thus representing the conflict of person versus self, or stands in for society. Conflict. 4. When the protagonist's conflict extends to confronting institutions, traditions, or laws of his or her culture, he or she struggles to overcome them, either triumphing over a corrupt society, I draw a blank here, rejecting it, Fahrenheit 451, or succumbing to it, 1984. 5. In this conflict, the protagonist is pitted against nature, Robinson Crusoe, or a representation of it, often in the form of an animal, Moby Dick. Conflict. 6. Superficially, conflict with the supernatural may seem equivalent to conflict with fate or God, or representative of a struggle with an evocation of self, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or nature, the birds. But this category stands on its own feet as well. 7. Person versus technology. Humanity's innate skepticism about the wonders of technology has resulted in many stories in which antagonists use technology to gain power, or in which technology takes over or becomes a malign influence on society. Brave New World.